Good morning. Can financial market infrastructures innovate? Some of you, especially if you're outside of the financial industry, may think of it from a different perspective. Can legacy, heavyweight, slow-moving infrastructure dinosaurs change? Some of you that may be from the academic environment and are fans of Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma may say, can incumbents that suffer from that dilemma, that want to protect their proprietary markets and ecosystem and way of doing things, can they ever make changes? So let's dive into that and see if we can unpack that idea from our perspective. First, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Yosef. Thanks to the entire ExactPro leadership for inviting me to this forum and allowing me to share with you some of our journey. We've had to change our model. We've had to look at ourselves and what our mode of operation was, and hopefully some of that introspection will resonate with some of you as well. First, some introductions. DTCC has been leading financial industry transformation for almost 50 years. You could say we were one of the earlier FinTech organizations in the post-trade environment. The industry working with the regulatory community in the late 60s and early 70s took physical certificates, put them in a vault, and created a central digital ledger. We've recently learned that the crypto market considers anything pre-crypto as an analog ledger, but if you look at the computer and the ones and zeros, it seems pretty digital to us. And since then, for the last 47 years, we've been working with the industry, we've been working with the global financial markets, we've been working with regulators around the world to add additional innovations to our capabilities and to the services that we provide to the industry. So in a sense, you could say we're like any company. We exist to serve our clients, but the fact is from internally and from our members, from our governing board and from our regulators, they don't consider us like any company. We're industry owned, we're industry governed. We're really the industry's company. There are a few market infrastructures just like us. We are really an extension of every financial firm. Our priorities and our motivations are in lockstep with all of our owners. Our owners are our shareholders. They're on our board of directors. They expect us to process every single day. They expect our quality to be unquestionable. We do not have any operational conflicts of interest. And unlike many newcomers in the FinTech space, we don't have an exit strategy. We expect, and our owners expect us to be around to build pyramids, to be around for a long time. So fast forward the clock to 2019. We've processed over 1.85 quadrillion worth of securities transactions last year. Yes, quadrillion is a word. We were formed to provide governance, risk management, and operational efficiencies and operational efficiencies of economies of scale to the financial industry to support post-trade processing, clearing, and settlement, securities, asset servicing, and now our utility model is being leveraged for many other financial services around the country, around the world. As part of our industry role as a central and critical financial market infrastructure, we're overseen by regulators in every global jurisdiction where we provide services. We see that relationship with the regulatory community and the industry standards that they set and that we must achieve as core to our value proposition to the industry. We have dedicated experts in regulatory compliance, reporting, risk management, and business continuity. We have regular inspections this past weekend, just like every single weekend, every weekend of the year. We conduct different DR and resiliency and outage tests. We conduct different scenarios, and we report on those scenarios to our regulators. So that's part of operating market critical infrastructure, is to have that regular operation and cadence of always testing. Since this is a testing-oriented conference, we're going to start with the scientific method, which really is supposed to start with a hypothesis that we're going to prove or disprove. So the hypothesis that we're going in with is financial industry infrastructures cannot innovate. It's a single statement. It's common to many incumbents around many established industries that we look at innovation and we look at the potential disruption and we look at our existing models and we try and figure out where those two meet. So innovation can take many shapes and is responsive to many demands, and we've been working with the industry for 50 years to move forward from, originally batch and receiving tapes to going to real time to, we process thousands of trades T0 every single day. Some of that is misunderstood and misreported, but T0 is part of the financial industry. Many firms can do that, but the reality is buyers buy what they can't pay for and they sell what they don't own. So 2 days is right now common industry practice to get the liquidity in place to do many transactions, and everyone orients themselves towards that. As market structure and market models change, the technology that underlies that can already be responsive to that today, but there's ways that technology can be improved as well. But I will say that around 4 years ago, a number of things came together that told us we can't innovate the way we've innovated traditionally. We've got to take a new look at our own innovation model and what it means. First, externally, 2015, we started reading in the press almost every single day about a new company that really, it was a whole column, a whole article on a new company that had a new model. It usually involved crypto currency, and it was going to replace DTCC within a couple of years. We looked into each of these companies, and what we pretty much always found is the company had no customers, it had no product, it had no revenue. Usually had two people, a laptop, sometimes a company dog, but they were getting coverage that they were going to disrupt DTCC because of this new technology, and it was this new technology that was the model that said fundamentally people believed that this was a real disruptive force. Next example of why we needed to change came from my home life. My then, 4 years ago, my 18-year-old son told me that he wanted to invest in the markets, and I said, good, cool, who are you going to use? Expecting the answer to be one of the brokers down the street, and he goes, I'm thinking about Robinhood or Betterment, and it was like, who? And he told me about them. So about a year ago or a couple of years ago, I was literally in one of our officers' meetings. There was a technical glitch, and I was talking to somebody about what my son had said. There was a technical glitch they were working with on stage, and the 5 minutes I'm sitting in the audience, I was able to download the app, go online, register, get as a known customer, become certified as a customer of that organization, connect to my bank account, download the money, and invest. 5 minutes. Needless to say, I'm pointing this out because our onboarding model of pulling in new customers is considerably longer than 5 minutes. I'm embarrassed to say what it is, and it's gotten much, much better. It's still not 5 minutes. And the last is an interesting thing, and maybe some of you have been through this as well. We're implementing RPA, robotics process automation. We're implementing bots to do the automated tasks that are repetitive that certain firms have people doing and sitting in front of screens, pulling down something from an email, typing it in, pulling the next thing down from an email, typing it in. So we had implemented this, we had implemented these bots, and as we implemented each bot and assigned it an ID, our HR system wanted to send it to training. It wanted it to go off campus to get multiple certifications. It had to go through ethics training. This was a bot. But just because we had an internal process that every ID that came into the organization, it must be a person, we had to send it for ethics training. So this kind of convergence of how we were looking at technology from an external perspective, how we dealt with our clients and the interactions with our clients, and how our internal systems were accommodating new technology said, aha, we've got to take this head on, we've got to do something about it. So they're all transformational. These models, the new approach to client interaction and client experience, how you can use cloud, how you can use distributed ledger, artificial intelligence. They are all, the potential of them, if you can go into your magic ball and look out multiple years, is your organization is going to be a much different place than it is today. But the reality is we are where we are today, and everything is a long journey. Everything is building on incremental steps that move us forward. And we recognize that as part of our model, but we had to set forward targets. We had to say, how are we going to start moving? We've used this metaphor inside of DTCC, and we call it the technology hype cycle that we're binge watching, like we binge watch television shows on Netflix. And distributed ledger is an example where there's this hype cycle and the entire industry is going to be replaced in a few short weeks. And then you finish the end of the season and you realize maybe not so fast. So we're seeing these technologies, DLT, AI, cloud, and we see the transformative power, but we know that it requires testing, it requires non-functional requirement exercises, it requires all the little things that we've done with technologies since the beginning, since we first formed. We've seen it with databases, we've seen it with the internet, we've seen it with Java, and these are new technologies that have now come into our sphere, and they're going to change. They're going to change the entire market, but it all needs to be done in appropriate steps. So we've created a program inside of DTCC, and the program is all about innovation, but without any irony, our starting point for almost anything that goes on inside of DTCC, based on our role, our position, and the responsibility which all of our owners have entrusted us, is to make sure that we have safe and sound markets that we process every single day. And there's a lot of way to approach innovation. There's a lot of way. Facebook is famous for move fast and break things. That's their motto. That's not our motto. None of you, none of our regulators, no one would accept that as our motto. So our starting point, something one of our previous CEOs used to repeat often, do no harm. So you can do experiments, you could try new things out, but your existing responsibilities, the existing model and way we process every single day cannot be damaged. It cannot change. It cannot change in a backwards negative way. Anything we do and any new technology and any implementation we make has got to improve that position. Second, organize with purpose. We're owned by the financial industry. We try to think of ourselves as more than a utility, but our agenda, our bandwidth, our budget is packed. Risk reduction projects, regulatory mandates, resiliency improvements, how to get to, in the event of a cataclysmic catastrophe where entire data centers and life can be lost, but we don't lose any of your trades, and we don't lose any of your processing, and we keep clearing and settlement going no matter what else is occurring in the world. So our mission and our focus on all of that consumes beyond all of our budget. So carving out a piece to say we're going to do some R&D, we're going to try some innovative new technology, requires a real pitch and a real sell job to our board that this is important. It's important not just for our survival, but to help work with the industry and figure out what the right ways that the industry should move forward and what are the ways that we can help the industry achieve that, because we bring this network with us and we bring this central function and central capability. So making sure we have objectives, making sure we have a target and a real program is a key component of what our model looks like. Next is changing our culture. The old phrase is that innovation, change, a strategy, culture eats all of those for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if you can't change your culture, you're not going to change anything. Our internal culture is based on a long history of risk, of caution, of risk aversion, of risk management, of trying to make sure that we address anything that can go wrong. We have exercises, we have tabletops, We have meetings where we just talk about trying to disrupt ourselves and what could happen if this situation happens. So changing that culture means spending a lot of time inside the organization. We've created an innovation council. We have instantiated a regular set of hackathons. We create goals for those hackathons. It could be user experience. We've worked with vendors, like an operational vendor that does reporting, and we challenge different IT teams around the world. Every one of our offices creates teams, and we have points, and we have competitions, and they try and come up with solutions. Some of the solutions are operational, some of them are client-focused, and then we have votes, and some of these solutions have actually gone to production. We've created gamification within our ecosystem. We created an API marketplace, kind of like an app store internally, and we started with the developers and created a developer marketplace to enhance the ability to find reuse opportunities and enhance the ability to find ways that developers can reuse something created by another developer. For anyone not in technology, this sounds natural. This sounds like the whole world of open source and what goes on in the outside world, in the wild. Inside companies, a lot of developers like to use exactly the tools that they've created for themselves, and they don't like to use tools from other parts of the organization, because those other parts of the organization haven't built support structures, they haven't built the parts that support the tool for everyone else, like a software company. So you end up with a lot of motivations that don't contribute to reuse. So gamification says you get points. You get points if you contribute something to the App Store. You get points if somebody uses what you've contributed to the App Store. If you are using something from the App Store, you get points. If you use somebody else's stuff, you get points. So we have all this point system, and you know what? It's actually changing how people see software, how they see the best way to build an application, because some of their motivations have changed. We've embraced open source, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more shortly, and we socialize. We've created a lot of tools for internal socialization and spreading the word and collaboration. We've expanded the toolbox. We've done a lot of work with cloud. We're working with some of our cloud vendors on the right way to move critical processing into the cloud, and what tools and what potential modifications to their ecosystems might be necessary. We've created capabilities to support a number of new tools like distributed ledger, like artificial intelligence and machine learning. But two things I really want to point out. One is about diversity. As an organization, we're very focused on diversity. I actually get some comfort from this audience because there is some diversity in the audience, but probably not quite as much as we like to see. Some of us who've been on speaking panels are trying to make it a policy to only speak on panels that are diverse, and that we won't be on a panel unless we see diversity in that panel. But it's a challenge, and you've got to embrace that challenge and say, how are we going to deal with it from the beginning? Girls Who Code is an organization that tries to get women into coding and break through the stereotype that has really resulted in a pipeline that is almost entirely male-dominated around the world. And we're very focused on trying to break that model. We've worked with a number of schools locally, this is at the high school level, the pre-college, and colleges, and we'll sponsor programs. We've brought in groups for summer sessions, and we'll work with them on coding challenges, we'll work with them on hackathons, and we'll work with them on some opportunities for them to bring code into our organization. So finding those diverse perspectives brings a lot of innovative ideas. And low dev is a really interesting one. This is basically a sandbox. Most organizations have rules, very specific rules about their firewalls, about how you can get into the internet, how you can get into open source, and how you can bring that into your organization. We've created this sandbox that allows our developers to have a much wider opportunity to play with new services, new cloud capabilities, new AI capabilities from vendors. So we're spending a lot of time on that model and in trying to encourage that internal culture change. But you could do all the encouragement in the world, if you don't change your motivations and you don't align your incentives for behavior, nothing will change. And the biggest problem and the thorniest problem for many large organizations is this thing called IT allocations. And anyone who's inside of a big enterprise knows exactly what I'm talking about. That if they're using the mainframe and they're writing code on the mainframe, it's basically free to write the next piece of code on the mainframe. If you write code in the cloud, if you write code using some new technology, you're paying for that new technology. And suddenly, you've created something that adds costs to the enterprise. So if you have a model that says everything you do that's innovative is going to be a tax, and any first mover into technology is going to be taxed until they succumb to the pressure and fold, just like all the first movers have succumbed previously, you're not going to innovate. And we've focused on that and faced that in our organization and said we have to change all of our models. We have to change the financial models. We have to change the incentive models. We have to dedicate funding to innovation and focused funding with intentional purpose and goals. And we've got to celebrate success. And some of that success could be failing fast. If you try something out and it fails fast, inside of big enterprises, failure is usually this long, laborious, torturous, ugly descent into incrimination and name-calling. And it's really not pretty for any of you who've seen that firsthand. But being able to say, we tried something, it's not going to work, let's shoot it, is a tremendous success that saves our owners, it saves the organization a lot of money, it saves a lot of energy, and it saves a lot of bad will. So anywhere you could move that motivation curve internally forward is a major advance. So many technologies come through the door, and they're the next silver bullet, and they're the next thing that's going to solve everything until you actually turn it on. And then you turn it on, and you suddenly realize, well, as soon as you put 3 transactions through it, it doesn't work, even though it used to work for 1 transaction. Or when it breaks and you try to bring it up again, it requires you to completely wipe out the database and start fresh. Or something goes wrong, a node goes down, and you don't know the node goes down. It doesn't make any noise. It doesn't bring up a pop-up screen. It doesn't give your operations any alerts because none of that was instrumented into that ecosystem. So until you test quality, until you really try to verify something in wartime, air quotes, conditions where this thing is being tested in anger, you don't really prove anything. We had a notion a few years ago of going cloud first. We realized cloud first doesn't work until you've got security first, automation first, and resiliency first. And we also realized you can't have more than one first. So we've taken a few steps back. We've focused a lot of our energy around making sure that security, resilience, and really automation are extreme, that when we say we're automating something and we try to make servers immutable, then you don't patch immutable servers. You don't change immutable servers. You don't ever change configurations and have configuration drift on immutable servers. You basically destroy it and redeploy it from the very beginning. And if you have your pipeline built and your development pipeline and your infrastructure pipeline and everything is software, everything is code, and everything is going into your code repositories and your validation, then you're a big step forward in where you need to be on moving towards a quality-based implementation. Rinse, repeat. Manage your innovation program to get to the point of a minimum viable deliverable, something that can demonstrate that the innovation matters or it doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, you've achieved something because you've said, this technology is interesting, but it has nothing to do with what we do. Or this technology just can't hack our non-functional requirements for scale or performance. Or it doesn't deliver the business value that we thought it was going to deliver. The point is that innovation is not a destination. It's not, this is what we're trying to accomplish. It's a journey. And everything is an incremental step forward. And it takes a lot of perseverance. So probably a couple months ago, a magazine called Global Custodian published an article about how quickly market infrastructures were embracing FinTech, working with FinTech, working with vendors, working with new technology. Firms like some of the firms that are in the room here in the back. And the way the article put it was, in a brutal sense of irony, the disruptor has become disrupted by the disruptee. The article went on to discuss how startups are being surprised that the financial industry can pivot and embrace innovative technology. Given that we've done this for a while, we have been pivoting and dancing and imagining a dinosaur, a T-Rex dancing on the head of a needle is, I guess, might be the image you hold in your head. But let me point to a couple of areas of innovation within DTCC that are underway today. First, as a nod to both the conference sponsor, ExactPro, as well as our enterprise test engineering group, they're focused on a lot of innovative approaches for improving quality at DTCC. They're pushing the front edge of our automation capability by saying that the pipeline has a fully automated set of test cases that they validate, not only software functionality, but as many non-functional requirements as possible, that they validate our infrastructure configuration, that all of this validation happens inside of our pipeline. We're encouraging and in the end forcing more of our developers to use that pipeline, even if they used to do things their own way. Because they get so many advantages from doing things the right way, they don't want to do their own thing anymore. We're leveraging inside of that group machine learning and AI. An example is that we use machine learning to identify common query patterns from some of our clients. When you start seeing those common query patterns, we feed that information into our testing methodology. So now that we see what people are really focused on in terms of queries, we could orient all of our testing and test scripts to test more of the edge cases. The number of test cases for many systems, many large systems, is almost infinite. But if you could expand the test coverage in areas of real pressure and real focus, then you've got something, and you've got value. So being able to do that is an example. And pushing our collaboration tools, and we're starting to try and use chatbots to get real-time feedback so we can turn around defect backlogs much quicker. Thought leadership for the industry is another example of where we're pushing forward. As we are doing research into our cloud journey, as we're doing research into distributed ledger, we've been continuing to advance our capabilities, and we're sharing all of that with the public. Certainly the financial industry, but a lot of things we're learning in cloud and pushing forward with our cloud vendors, and a lot of things we're learning on distributed ledger. For instance, the post-trade tokenization framework document we released earlier this year, and the DLT governance document that we recently published as a joint authorship with Accenture are really generalized network, distributed ledger network knowledge. And it not just applies to the financial industry, it applies to anywhere where you want to create a network that shares a technology stack, shares a distributed ledger model, and requires a governance and administrative capability. And lastly, starting at our top, our CEO supported funding an Office of FinTech Strategy, which is looking outside and working with our industry, working with FinTech, working with technology vendors, and finding opportunities, the right opportunities for DTCC to work with the industry on leading us to the next level and the next generation of market infrastructure and capability. A great example that I would like to share, and certainly from, we've met with quantum computing vendors, and we're looking at where we can apply and leverage capabilities from that, all the way through to more mature models and security. But I do want to point out the work we are doing with Hyperledger. And as Mike noted, I just recently, in February, became chairman of the board of Hyperledger. But Hyperledger is an organization that's really bringing together all of the brightest minds in the distributed ledger ecosystem to focus on enterprise-grade capabilities and all the things that are needed inside of enterprise-grade distributed ledger models for a community. Those of you who are working with distributed ledger know there are a lot of different technologies out there and a lot of different models. Hyperledger is under the Linux Foundation, so the biggest open source community in the world. And some of you might think of Hyperledger as one project and one technology stack fabric. There's really 15 different projects under Hyperledger. There's 5 different stacks. There's Fabric, there's Sawtooth, there's Iroha, there's Burrow, and we just announced a new one, Besu, which is a new Ethereum client. We've gotten closer with the enterprise Ethereum community and the large skills that they bring into that ecosystem. Both R3 and Digital Asset in the back of the room are members of Hyperledger. And the different projects from a crypto security library, Project Ursa, to interoperability, to testing frameworks, Caliper. There's many different projects in the Hyperledger community. We have special interest groups that are in telecom, that are in healthcare, that are in the food industry, and we're trying to look at ways of leveraging these technology models for the benefit of the global industry, of all global industries, not just the financial community, but certainly the financial industry is going to be a critical part of that. So DTCC leveraging its vendor-neutral, independent perspective as an industry-owned consortia, and taking that objective view is really trying to help advance that model. So I'm going to revise the hypothesis based on these conversations, certainly from our perspectives, and I'll take that. We have over 24 applications live in the public cloud. We've been live in the public cloud since 2012. Among the earlier, maybe not the first, but among the earlier financial institutions to leverage the great capabilities of that exist in that cloud from multiple perspectives. We're into testing blockchain technology to replace a mainframe system that supports credit default swaps. We're working closely with the industry to determine other places to leverage these technologies. So I propose we're a different company, we're probably a different industry, and certainly many of you have changed models tremendously in the last 5 years. We're innovating from our core, we're innovating with resiliency, we're innovating from quality, we're innovating to improve capital efficiency, to improve our client experience, and we're actually seeing the level of organizational energy, the level of new employee engagement and being able to recruit at colleges, and our focus on diversity and what innovative ideas and models are bringing that closer. Innovation, I think a number of people have pointed out, is really connecting the dots. It's connecting different ideas and applying it sometimes just incrementally to business processes that have long existed, an idea of how to use it differently, and new technology, and magic can happen. So with that, I thank you for all of you for listening to our journey, and I'm happy to take any questions.